John 1, 1 through 18. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness, to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light. True light, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to all who did receive him, who believe in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness about him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, he who comes after me ranks before me, because he was before me." For from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, the only God who is in the Father's side, who is at the Father's side. He has made him known. All of this section is driving toward verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory. So that what's going on in the first 5 verses, and then as the story unfolds, is a story. It's driving toward that incarnation when the Word becomes flesh. Who is the Word? What is the Word? That he becomes flesh and dwells among us. The first 5 verses teach us a lot of things about the Word. In the beginning was the Word. There we are talking about the eternity. When there is a beginning, when time starts, at that moment which has no before, he is already there. He is original. He is foundational. He is the principle. He's the arche, the principle, the foundational, and original. He is eternal. It also says that the Word was with God, and that shows us that there is relation. He is with, he is to, or he is toward, and he is before God. But he is God. He has identity with God. And so what John is doing there is driving right away toward the doctrine of the Trinity. This Gospel of John is one of the most important sources for the doctrine of the Trinity. It's an amazing book if you think about it. What John was trying to do, 60 years of meditating on the events that he had witnessed. And now what he is trying to do is to steer all of Western theology in a way, to give us the doctrine of the Trinity, all of Christian theology, toward the proper formulation of the difficult doctrine of the Trinity, that there is one God, that there is a unique divine identity, and yet within the divine identity, which is not many, but one, there is relations. There are relations. One who is with and not two gods. And so we call that in our theology, we call that persons. We distinguish the essence and say that the Son is consubstantial, same substance, co-essential. There is one essence in God, but there are two and a total of 3 persons. There's also the primordial society, and that's when it says he was in the beginning with God, using the same word for beginning again, that sense of foundational, of original. There is an original society. When there is nothing, there is the divine society. That's driving toward 14, where the Word becomes flesh and dwells among us. And so that sense of society, of relationship, is primordial and important. He is the creator, according to verse 3. All things were made through him. He is not a subordinate instrument, as Matthew Henry says. I looked at Matthew Henry hoping for something less philosophical, not because I dislike it, but because it's hard for people to handle those things. And I found a lot of philosophical concepts in Matthew Henry. It's just a difficult thing to study and to understand. He says that the word is creator not as a subordinate instrument, but as a coordinate agent. He is an agent. He is the agency. The word is the agency. The Son is the agency of the Father. They are not uh, he is not his instrument that he uses to make all things. When he makes it by his word is his agent. The agency of God, the agency of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, working one thing in creation. He is the source of all. Without him was not anything made that was made. Everything. What what exists that doesn't come from the word? Nothing. All things. He is the source of all. Not only is he the source of all things, he is the life, that which animates. There is existence, and beyond existence, there is awareness. A rock is not aware. A plant is a little bit more aware. An animal is yet more aware. And yet he takes it beyond that, obviously. He is the life, and the life becomes light. And the light is awareness in the sense of moral things, of right and wrong, in that moral dimension. He is the light of men. He is the truth of God, the law of God, the source of all these things, including the highest awareness, the awareness of right and wrong, and the awareness perhaps of God as well in that way, because the light shines in the darkness. It shines into the darkness of our sin, of our rebellion, but it shines into the darkness of our turning away from God. And so it's a light that shows God. And the darkness, it says, has not overcome it, which is true enough. The darkness is not friendly to the light, but it's also, it could be translated, the darkness does not grasp, doesn't understand. What is going on is the response of the darkness to this light which shines on it in benevolence and in kindness, but is also hostile to the darkness, the sin and the evil and the wickedness and the perversity and the rebellion of man. The next section is verses 6 through 8. There's a witness. What do we learn about the witness? There was a man sent from God, so we learn that God sends him. God not only shines, God not only creates and sustains and makes all things and shines into our rebellion, he sends a witness. Why? Because the darkness has not comprehended it. Why does the light need a witness? Because the darkness cannot understand. And so God in his kindness sends a witness. The witness is not the light. He is a human being and nothing more. We need the light which brings the light of God. We need more than just a human prophet, another human messenger. John is another human messenger. He is a witness. He points to the light because the darkness has such a hard time understanding it. So God in his kindness sends a witness. Next, we learn more about the light, the word as light in verses 9 through 13. What do we learn about the light? We learn that it is a genuine and true light. It is hard for someone who has read Plato to read passages like this in John, passages such as you find in Hebrews, and not understand them in terms of Platonism. I have to wonder. A lot of biblical scholars push back when you start interpreting logos in terms of Greek philosophy. They want to associate it with the Old Testament wisdom tradition and nothing more. And I think that's certainly right to associate it with the wisdom tradition. of the Old Testament. Obviously, it has to come out of that. But I wonder if John is so ignorant that he did not know that Heraclitus talked about logos and all his flux and that dynamic coordinating thing, like light, like fire shining throughout, an intellectual fire of logos. He is the true light. What do we learn? It's a genuine, it is a true light. It isn't a false light. It isn't a misleading light. It is the reason that light exists. It is the light that gives coherence to all other lights so that we understand what light is, that it illuminates, that it gives understanding. It is an intellectual, a spiritual light, the light of God. The light of God shines coherence into the universe because everything resolves into one thing. That is God. It is also, it says, the light was coming into the world. It has been coming. There is a sense of the light of not only the light of nature, but the light of revelation, of special revelation, the light of Christ shining into the world, developing, progressing as progressive revelation unfolds, coming into the world, preparing for the moment when the Word becomes flesh, which does not happen without much anticipation. All the Old Testament, the sacrificial system, the exile, and captivity, Exodus, all those things which give meaning and context to the coming of the world. It has been coming. But the light is not recognized. He was in the world, and the world was made through him. And yet the world did not know him. Something is off about the world. Something is wrong with the world. The darkness has messed with the world, just as sin destroys our faculties and our awareness and perception and degrades life. It turns away from life. And so it loses all those things. There's something wrong with the world. It does not recognize the light that has been shining in and shining brighter. He has come to his own, and his own did not receive him. It has been rejected even by those who were especially prepared. His own, the Jewish people, the descendants of Abraham, through the flesh of which he is one. They who had the, the that order of life, they had the worship of the tabernacle, all the system of meaning for the coming of one, expecting one to come, expecting the light. They were the lamp in which the light was supposed to burn, we could say. But they did not receive him. They did not receive. What is receiving? Well, we learn that in verse 12. There are those who do receive him. They are those who believe. He is received by faith, and to those who receive him by faith, he has the authority to convey on them the status of children, of his own. They become his own. Now, the outward uh, Old Testament sense of being his people because you are born of a certain stock falls away for the inner reality, the spiritual truth that we are the sons of Abraham by faith. Those who receive him have the right to become children of God, and he explains it in terms of a new birth, who are born not of the will of flesh, not of blood or of the will of flesh. That is no longer that is how God demonstrated it externally in the past. Now we have the real thing, born of the will, not of the will of man, but the will of God. Born again, born of the light, so that we can see and recognize and walk in the light and be children of the light. And so it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. How does the world become flesh? The Word become flesh. He becomes flesh by taking up that which is creature, that which has limits. The Word is infinite. The Word is God. The Word has no limits. The Word is eternal. He has no past and no future. He doesn't have those limits on his present as we do. He is unlimited in his wisdom. He is unlimited in space, by space. He has no limits. He is omnipresent. He has no limits in anything at all. He is infinite in his being, infinite in his wisdom, power, holiness, justice, goodness, and truth. And he takes that which is limited, that which is emptiness. He who was fullness also takes up emptiness, and he joins to himself the creature in his person. How does the Word become flesh? By joining in the person of the eternal Son, that which is God and that which is man, complete God, not adding on to God who is infinite, to whom you cannot add anything, but joining the two together, taking up emptiness. Why does the Word become flesh? So that we may see his glory, so that we might see the radiance, the true light of God, the light of light, the light which gives meaning and purpose to all other light. Why does light exist? So that we might behold our God. He shows us the glory of God in his humanity. We see the life and conduct of a divine person, of the second person of the Trinity. In all he does, we see grace and truth. What is John's message then in verses 15 to 18? John's message is that there is one who follows who was before, renewing that sense of paradoxical expression, one who is with God and one who is God, when there are not two gods, one who is before and one who is after and one who is before, one who comes after, one who comes after in time, but one who has no origin and always was. So what he says makes us think, who is this? This is someone who stretches the boundaries of human language just to try to express what he says, let alone the fact that we are darkness and reject the light. He is the source also. As John, perhaps the writer and not John the Baptist, comments in verse 16, for from his fullness we have all received. He who was full took up emptiness so that he might give to us that which we need. Grace, the unmerited favor, the presence of God, the goodness of God which we do not deserve. The law, he says, was a source of condemnation. The law was given through a mere prophet, but a greater than Moses is here, giving us not only condemnation, but grace and truth. The truth of God, the true light, the genuine, uh, full, not partial and not in stages, but the full revelation of what God is doing. God with us, the Word become flesh, the deity united to humanity in order to save us. No one has ever seen God. The only God who is at the Father's Son, he has made him known. God who is uniquely generated. That is the source of the distinctions between if there is a son, then there is a father. There has never been a time without a son because there has always been a father. And how is he a father? Because he generates a son in all eternity. And this society is what makes it possible that we should be rescued, because the Son joins humanity in his person without departing from the Godhead, without exiting, as it were. He is born within, but he joins humanity to the Godhead so that we might have the light of God. We who are in darkness might see, so that he might die for us as a human being and rescue us in his grace and kindness.